it's Talks from Crits Happen. Welcome back and thanks for watching. We're here in the game room and we're about to go through another critical review of a game that you may or may not have seen already. So as you know, I like to bring games to people through Kickstarter, Indiegogo, independent things like thegamecrafter.com and things that you may or may not have heard of before. So today we're going to look at something very interesting. But before we do that, I'd like to share the poker chip with you. The poker chip is probably the most basic of game components. It's round, it's flat, it's usually made of clay. Some people can stack them and shuffle them, some people can rotate them in their fingers really cool, and others can flip them across the room with a snap of their fingers. But whether you're a casual player or whether you're a hardcore poker player, this has been one of the most interesting game components to me for a very long time. My grandfather actually taught me how to play poker when I was very little. He was in the military, and that was something they would do to pass their time when he was at war. And when I was growing up, he taught me how to play, and I would always play with the poker chips. I was fascinated by the different types of poker chips that were out there, and then of course as I got older I went to Vegas and Atlantic City and saw different types of chips. It was just really cool. But today's game takes the poker chip and flips it on its head in a very interesting way. Today we're going to look at a game called Hoplomachus, The Lost Cities. Now Hoplomachus is a heck of a name to say, and it's a huge box as you can see, but all for good reason. We will break into the box and we will show you all the different things that are inside of it. But you need to know a couple of things ahead of time. This is a game that's very unique. It is a game capable of being played solo. It is a game capable of being played head-to-head, and it's a game capable of being played cooperatively. So it offers quite a bit out of the box. Additionally, what you're going to see is a prototype. It's not a finished product. That's not to intend or set any kind of expectations that this is what you're going to get if you've kickstarted this game or this is the final thing. This is a prototype, and we just want to make sure that everybody understands that. Now that said, it's still very eye-catching. It's something that's going to get your interest if this is your type of game. The final thing is this is in conjunction with some of our friends. Some of you may know and read Father Geek from fathergeek.com or Larry and Tim from indie20gamegroup.com as well, or indie20group.com, excuse me. While I was there, I was at Gen Con when this all started. Larry and Tim were nice enough to introduce me to Adam and Josh Carlson, who are the guys behind Chip Theory Games, the makers of Hoplomachus. And we just had an absolute excellent time. We hit it off. They were really nice guys, and they were very open about what they had done, what they had worked on, and where the game was going, which says a lot to me. I really believe that truly great designs come from open collaboration and not from hiding things under a blanket. So they were really great to meet. So I definitely want to thank Larry and thank Tim for introducing me to them. In the process, we got into discussion, and basically what we found is that there's only 4 copies of the game in existence right now. And they were nice enough to give us one, as well as the Indie 20 group, as well as Father Geek, to go ahead and put a review together. So as part of that, we collaborated ourselves as reviewers and said, you know what? Let's make this very worthwhile for the fans. Instead of just each of us doing this, we're going to point our fans to the other sites as well. So at the end of the review, we'll have links for you both to the Indie 20 Group's review and to Father Geek's review as well. And we want to thank them very much for being collaborative, being open, and being able to allow you guys to see different points of view. By no means is my point of view like the final, nor should it ever be. All I am is a really passionate gamer who likes to bring you the games that I like to play and give you my opinion on it. And if that helps you make a decision, great. If it helps you drive you crazy because you don't like what I say, I'm sorry. But in the end, reviewers should be a multitude, in my opinion. You should be able to see 2, 3, 4, 10 reviews, however many it takes, to get you to make a good decision about how you want to spend your hard-earned money on games that will hopefully provide the most enjoyment to you. So I'm really happy and really excited to be working with Father Geek and Indie 20 Group to be able to bring you different people's opinions of a game that we really like. So why do we like it? Well, let's go ahead and dig in. We'll show you some of the components, we'll talk about the gameplay, and then we'll come back and give you final thoughts. So this is Hoplomachus, everything that is in the box. The game itself is a game designed where you are in an arena in ancient Rome, Hoplomachus actually means armored warrior or armored fighter. And you are fighting both to defeat your opponents, be it another player or be it the actual arena bosses, and we'll talk about that in a second. And you're fighting to gain the favor of the crowd. As was said in one of the most famous movies, are you not entertained? That is what Hoplomachus is all about. And it pulls it off by using chips to represent different units in the battlefield or in the arena, and uses all of these red chips to represent the health, which is a very unique mechanic, and we'll talk about that in a second. But let's go through what you get. First, you get this beautiful play mat, and it is a mat. It's something that I love. I know it's going to sound really cheesy and really dumb, but using a play mat for this and not a board fits so well with the poker chips. Because if you're capable of shuffling your chips, you have the extra little push on this to shove down, get a little leverage, and shuffle your chips. I really like that. And I don't know if that was necessarily intentional or not. Josh and Adam didn't really say yes or no, but it is a nice little thing. So what is all of this sitting in front of me? Well, aside from the play mat, where we'll get into the turns and how you utilize all the different spaces on here, you have 3 different cities represented in the game. The object or the background of the game is that there are 3 lost cities who have emerged, and that Rome has decided to learn about them or study them through combat in the arena to understand and assess the threat that these cities may pose. In blue, we have the lost city of Atlantis. In green, we have the lost city of Xanadu. And in yellow, we have the lost city of El Dorado. Now, the cities themselves are fairly similar with some slight tweaks. They all have the same type of basic units. They will each start with 2 city gladiators, 2 defenders, 2 attackers, 2 defenders, 2 archers, and 2 tacticians. In addition, they all have the same 4 tactics, but they each have a different champion. Now, the backs of the champions are grayed out, and there's a reason for that we'll show you during gameplay. The backs of the regular chips have the Hoplomachus logo on them, and that's because you're going to randomize your chips as you play the game. Now, to some people, they may say, well, that doesn't seem very different if they all have the same units, and even if the units do the same things, because they do. The defender, for instance, can have the ability to intercept blow and reposition on all 3 of the Lost Cities units. And I haven't had a chance to talk with Josh or Adam about this yet to understand if this is because it's a prototype and things will change, but it really doesn't impact the game that much, and here's why. Each city has a different core mechanic. Atlantis uses a mechanic called pull, Xanadu uses a mechanic called hurl, and El Dorado uses a mechanic called fury aura. The city gladiators have the basic version of those abilities. The champions have an extreme version of those abilities, usually much more buffed, a little bit more damaging, or a little bit more far-reaching. Those little differences in the city actually make a huge impact on the gameplay. And even though you may not think it, as you get into playing more of these games, pulling, hurling, and doing damage with Fury Aura drastically changes things, even though you all have the same access to defenders, tacticians, archers, and attackers. And throughout the game, it is going to be randomly shuffled. All of these chips get shuffled in for your city into a bag. You would pull them out, and then one by one, play 1 chip each turn. And again, we'll get into the turns in a moment. In addition, these black chips are arena bosses and then arena units, and those are utilized during the player versus environment versions. So when you're playing co-op against the arena, or whether you're playing solo against the arena, these black big baddies are the ones that you're going to have to go and take down. Finally, you also have what's called crowd favor tokens or crowd favor chips. Crowd favor is a big part of the game. It's one thing to beat down your opponent, it's a whole nother thing to do it and entertain the crowd while you do so. We'll explain how you gain crowd favor in a moment when we look at gameplay, but just understand that these white chips are rewards for gaining crowd favor, or for being behind in crowd favor. And we'll talk about that in a second too. Additionally, you get 3 jewels to go ahead and track your crowd favor. You get attack dice, you get movement dice, which are used for moving arena units. You get chips to be able to pick randomly if you don't want to decide which city to play. You could throw these together, shuffle them, and pick one out. Whatever color you get is the city you play. And then you have a chip to go ahead and decide who goes first, just like heads or tails. Lots and lots of chips. Additionally, you do get an instruction booklet, which is actually very well done. As most of you know, myself and Tim from the Indie 20 group have kind of a fetish, I guess is the easiest way to say it, around instruction booklets. I really like instruction booklets that are well written, plain and simple, and ones that have a lot of pictures that show examples. This one definitely does. So, now that you've seen everything that comes in this box, let's go ahead and take a look at gameplay, how we actually get our units into the arena, and how we ultimately defeat our opponent and win the game. Okay, so what you're looking at here is a basic setup for a player versus player game of Hoplomachus. You have one champion in their city on this side and one champion in city on that side. Now the first thing you may think is, well, this looks a little weird, because while this game looks symmetrical, I only see 6 circles here and only 4 here. And there's a reason for that. When you're playing player versus the arena, this is the side that you will play from, and you will use these 2 additional circles to place chips out. But in a player versus player, you only place 4 of each side. So, we start the game by placing our champions, and we place them with the gray side up so that they are shown as inactive. And there is a reason for that, and we'll get into it in a second. Now, the units are going to be able to be placed anywhere you want, or the champions, excuse me, are going to be able to be placed anywhere you want on these 9 brown hexes. So the game explains the rules by starting here, so we're going to keep it that way and start it here. But if I wanted to, I could start over here, I could start back here, wherever I would like to start. In addition, I have access, if I'm Xanadu, to these 6 bloody hexes, which will allow me to deploy my gladiators here. My opponent, as Atlantis, would have access to these 6 bloody hexes as well. So what are the ones in the middle? Those are very important. These 2 black hexes are the crowd favor hexes. When you start your turn with a unit on one of them, you will gain a crowd favor. And this will be my crowd favor scale, and this will be my opponent's crowd favor scale. If I start the turn with a unit on both, I get 3 points of crowd favor. 1, 2, 3, like that. So that's what we use the gems for. Now during the game, you're going to be playing units and tactics from your chip bag into your ready area, and then playing them into the game and deploying them. Killing units also provides you a way of getting crowd favor. For each unit you kill of the opposing team, you get 2 crowd favor. Once you achieve a level, you'll notice there's a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4. You will achieve, let's say, level 1, and you get what the reward is. So it says here, crowd favor tactic unlocked, activate your champion. So at level 1, you get to activate your champion. Once activated, they can use their abilities, they can move, and they can attack. And champions have very good attacks. For example, Gurak here has 2 black and a blue die for his attack. Now, what does that mean? We'll get into that in a second. What happens with this chip? If I reach this level and my opponent is behind on his scale, he will actually get this chip. The first 3 chips are random tactics. The final chip is a random gladiator. Very powerful. The final chip you always receive. The first 3 though, if I run up and race out to get ahead and get up to like level 2 or level 3 crowd favor, while I may be winning the game and I may have positioned myself very well, my opponent, if they are below me when I reach each of these levels in crowd favor, is going to get all 3 of these chips. So not only are they going to have an advantage of having more tactics to play, they're very, very impactful tactics as well. So this is a very nice mechanic because it doesn't allow someone to come in and just run away with the game and kill like 2 or 3 units really quickly early and get good rolls and do that. It allows the player who gets crushed a little bit at the beginning to have an opportunity to come back later in the game. In the event of a tie, if let us say that I am on 2 and my opponent reaches 2, then in an event of a tie, it goes to the person who achieved the level. So the opponent would get his own chip. So there are times that you will gain the chips in your scale. There are times you will gain the chips in your opponent's scale. And in the end, if you can get to level 4, you're going to get these gladiators, which will help you quite a bit. Now, just so you know what the different levels are, level 1 unlocks your champion. Level 2 unlocks all deployment hexes. So that means aside from my 6 I could use on this side, I could also deploy on this side as well. That's very powerful. Hint, trick, don't do that against Atlantis. Their ability of pull will crush you. Level 3, CF Tactic unlocked. All units gain +1 yellow attack die for basic attacks. We'll get into that in a second, but obviously more dice equals more opportunities to hit. And then level 4 is CF Gladiator unlocked and deployed on the next deploy phase. So you're going to get that Gladiator and they're going to come into play and they're going to beat on people and just crush them. Now, in addition to all that, you have these 4 thatched hexes. This one is labeled 1 and 5, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. In a player versus player game, those are not used. In a player versus environment game, that is where those black chips that are the arena units and the bosses, they will come out of here when rolled. So if I were to spawn one, I would roll 3 and they would spawn up here. The bosses will start in the back and make their way over, but that's what those are used for. In a player versus player, does not matter, does not mean anything. So let's take a look at combat, and we'll show you bringing creatures out or bringing gladiators out and go ahead and getting into combat. So the first thing each player would do is they would draw 4 random chips from their bag. And you can look at them, and in this case, Xanadu pulls a tactician, and I'm just going to play them face up. Normally you would play them face down. But we have a tactician, we have a city gladiator, we have a tactic that adds 2 health to a friendly champion, a non-champion unit, and we have a defender. So pretty good mix of units at the very beginning to give us an option. Xanadu has a pretty good setup. Let's see what Atlantis has. Atlantis would start with also a city gladiator, an attacker. We'd also get a tactician as well. And we would get another city gladiator. Now remember again, the city gladiators have the city's abilities. So in Atlantis' case, it's pull. In Xanadu's case, it's hurl. So let's talk a second about those abilities. Eldorado, which is not on the table, has Fury Aura. Fury Aura allows you to do damage to units within 1 hex of you. So if this guy had Fury Aura, everybody in 1 hex space of him would take a damage. The champion for Eldorado has Enraged Fury Aura, which means if this is that guy, anything within 2 hexes would take 1 damage. So quite a bit of reach on that. But in Xanadu and Atlantis' case, we have different mechanics altogether. Xanadu uses Hurl. What Hurl means is if I have a gladiator right here and I'm next to him, I can hurl him to 1 space adjacent to me. So I could flip him over my head, I could flip him over here, I could shift him to the side, or any of that. Pull would allow me to pull somebody from 1 space away, 1 space closer. And in both cases, the champions have a bigger version of that. Hurl for Xanadu's does 1 space, but Seismic Hurl, which is what Gurak has, allows you to do 3 spaces. So I could have someone here and I could hurl them 1, 2, 3 up to here, which is really nice. You may think that's going to really jerk around with your opponents. It's also really good to use on your own characters and your own gladiators. Now, while the pull will allow someone here to pull from 1 space away, Extreme Pull allows you to do it from 3 spaces away and pull them 2 towards you. So while Xanadu is throwing people all over the map, Atlantis is pulling them in closer and sucking them into battle. So let's say this is the chips that we started our player versus player game with. What would we do? Well, the very first phase of the turn is to check for crowd favor and draw. So normally what I would do is check to see if I have any units on either of the crowd favor hexes. I do not, so I don't get any crowd favor. I would normally draw, but I have 4 chips in my my ready area already, so I wouldn't draw anything. And then for my second phase, I'm allowed to deploy a unit or play a tactic. You're allowed to play 1 chip basically on your turn. It can be a tactic or a gladiator, but you cannot play both. So in this case, my tactic isn't going to help me because it says add 2 health to a friendly non-champion unit. Well, the only thing I have out is a champion, so I have to bring a unit out. So what I think I'm going to do is I'll bring out a tactician. And this is where the red chips come in. You'll notice that each of our champions have 10 stacks of red chips underneath them, or 10 red chips in 1 stack. That represents the health. They each have 10 health. I can deploy on any one of these 6 hexes. So I'm going to go ahead and deploy right here. I'm going to deploy my tactician. Now the tactician has 2 health, so I put 2 chips underneath him. He has 1 range for attack, 3 speed, and 3 range for tactics. What that means is if I'm going to play a tactic and I'd like him to be the one to cast it, he can touch anything within 3 hexes of him. That's a very important thing. Everybody is considered to be 0 hexes away from themselves, so if you wanted to play it on themselves, they obviously could. Excuse me. So, the nice thing about the tactician are his abilities. And let's go ahead and take a look at those. So the tactician has initiative and strategic attack. In addition, you may have also seen that it says 1 damage, no roll. Instead of rolling dice to attack with the tactician, anyone that he is adjacent to, because he has 1 range for attack, would take a damage without rolling. But it's only 1 unit that he can attack at a time. Initiative is very important because initiative means that he can move the turn he comes in. Normally, you cannot do that. Strategic attack allows me to add a yellow die to somebody else's attack, basic attack, that is near me. So the first thing we'll do is we will actually use his initiative and go 1, 2, 3. And I'm doing that so at the beginning of my next turn, I will have my guy on that crowd favor spot, and I will go ahead and gain 1 crowd favor. Now I could attack if I had someone to attack with, but initiative only lets him move. It doesn't let him attack. The archers actually have the ability First Strike, which allows them to attack the turn they come in. So since I can't attack, that is the end of my turn. And then I would go ahead and pass to my opponent in Atlantis, and they would start off. So Atlantis has a city gladiator, well actually 2 city gladiators. They have an attacker, and they also have a tactician. So let's go ahead and do the exact same thing from this side. We'll go ahead and put a tactician in with 2 health. 1, 2, 3, and move, because they're allowed to move with initiative, and that would be the end of Atlantis' turn as well. We would then come over to Xanadu, and we would immediately check our crowd favor for the beginning of our turn. We have 1 player on this center hex, so we would gain 1 crowd favor. We would draw another chip, and we would put that into our mix, and again, these would normally be face down, but we'll play them face up for you to see them, and we would get a defender. So I think what we'll do this time is we will actually go ahead and use the City Gladiator that has 3 health. And since this guy's over here, we're going to bring him in on this side. So we'll deploy him on that hex. And we will also not move him or do anything because his abilities are Hurl and Stun. Let's go ahead and take a look at them for a second. So as you will have noticed, there is 2 different abilities, a main ability of Hurl, and then a secondary attack of Stun. The basic attack would do a black and a blue die. So if I was adjacent to him, I could roll a black and a blue die and attack with that. The Hurl ability I could use as an ability at any time during my turn, but there's no one adjacent for me to hurl. The Stun is an alternate attack, And there are big differences in those. The reason being is that a basic attack, his black and blue, would be affected by the strategic attack ability of the tactician. His bonus attack, the stun, is a secondary attack and doesn't get affected by the strategic attack. So now we can do some interesting things. While I would like to keep the crowd favor I have there, I can now move my tactician if I want and be able to start doing some damage. And I think that's what I want to do. So I'll come in here, and because I'm adjacent, I can attack. Now you'll remember that the tactician does 1 damage, no rolling. So I don't have to roll any dice. I would do 1 damage to this tactician, and I would take off 1 red chip to show that he has been hurt. This is a really nice thing about this game. At any point while people are playing this game, if the game looks like this, guess who's winning? Atlantis. It's really easy to walk up to a game like this and see who has the advantage. I really, really like that about this game. So that would be the end of our turn for Xanadu, and we would flip over to Atlantis. Atlantis would first check its crowd favor, and they would gain 1 because they have their tactician on that spot. They would draw a chip, and they would get an attacker. And the next thing that they would do would be to, 1, 2, 3, bring out one of their city gladiators as well. And we're going to put him right there. They too can now attack. So he will stay on this crowd favor spot and deal 1 damage back to this tactician. Because again, the tacticians do not need to roll. They just do 1 damage and that's it. Since he just brought out his city gladiator, that one can't move or attack either, so there's nothing else to do for Atlantis' turn. Now we would go on to Xanadu's turn. They would check their crowd favor, of which they have none right now, because they've moved off this hex and came over here, so they would not get any crowd favor. They would draw another chip, and they would get an attacker. The attackers are really fun. So what we're going to do is actually want to keep our city gladiator alive. So I'm going to cast the tactic on our city gladiator. He has 1 range for tactics, but since he is casting it on himself, he is okay. This will add 2 health to a non-champion unit. So we'll go ahead and add 2 health to him. And now we can start doing some really funky things. So I can move and attack. So the first thing I have to do is move. I cannot do, and these are 2 totally separate things. I can't move, attack, move, attack. I have to move all my chips first and then attack afterwards. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to move 2, 1, 2, because that's what I can do with him. And then I will use my hurl ability, and I will throw this guy 1 hex. So I'm going to throw him 1 hex that way back onto the crowd favor spot because I want to be able to try and get the crowd favor on my turn. Now it's a little risky because this guy may actually come up and kill him, but in this game you're going to have to take risks. The next thing we'll do is attack. Now I have the option of either using my basic attack, which is a black or a blue, or an alternate attack, which is a stun. If I stun, it's very simple. It does exactly what you would think it would do. It would stop them from moving, it would stop them from attacking, but more importantly, it stops them from using abilities. So if you have a defender out that could normally act as a tank and intercept a blow, if they're stunned, they can't do that. So stunning is a very important mechanic in the game as well. In this case, I think we'll just go ahead and roll with our basic attacks of black and blue. Now, had I left this guy next to me, I could have gained a yellow as well, but because I want the crowd favor, and because he only has 1 chip left for health, I'm going to go ahead and roll. Now, what are the differences in the dice? It's a great question. The yellow dice have a 1 in 3 chance of hitting. There's basically 2 H's, 1 on either side, and 4 misses. The blues have 3 H's, which are hits, and then 3 misses, so a 50% chance. The black only have 1 blank side, and the rest are all H's. So blacks are very good. So with a black and a blue, we'll roll dice, get 2 hits, and deal 2 damage, which is enough to kill the gladiator, and they would go away. Whenever you play a tactic, or whenever a gladiator dies, they're just simply removed from play and put off to the side. They're not put back into your bag, and you don't get to draw them out again later. So because we killed that gladiator, we also get 2 crowd favor points. We're making our way ever so closer to the crowd favor of level 1. That would be the end of our turn, and we would flip over to Atlantis. Atlantis would then go ahead and pull out a chip. They'd check their crowd favor, but they do not have any because their guy is dead. And then we would go ahead and spawn one of our chips. Now, we have a defender, another city gladiator, an attacker, and an attacker. And we just got crushed. So I think it's time to go ahead and pull out another city gladiator. Now, we're going to put this guy on this side. And here's where things get very interesting. I am going to move 1, 2 right here. And I'm going to use my pull ability. Why? Well, pull means from 2 hexes away, I can pull somebody 1 hex closer. If I miss my attack roll here, then I'm going to be able to keep him off of that crowd favor spot. So it's very important for that. Now again, I could pull, or I could use my basic attack, or I could stun because it's a city gladiator, but I'm going to go ahead and actually attack him with the black and the blue dice. And see, in this case, I missed both. So he stays alive. However, because of the pull, I've moved him off. So he will not gain crowd favor during his turn. So not the best turn for Atlantis, but you can start to see the different strategies that come into play. And at any given time, you're going to have 2, 3, 4 gladiators on this board. And then you're also going to be unlocking your champion, and the champion's going to be coming in and attacking as well. Champions, aside from having the better version of the city's abilities, they also have some pretty big attacks. Gurak, for existence, is a black, black, and a blue, and Ferris from Atlantis is a black, black, and a yellow. So lots of things happening in this game from a strategic standpoint. Let's go ahead and pull back and we'll give you some of our final thoughts, but we hope this gives you a good overview of how the game plays and shows a lot about the components that come with it. So that's Hoplomachus, the Lost Cities. I hope that this video has given you a good idea of the overview of the game and kind of how to play it. But in addition, we also have a critical play put together on a player versus arena or a player versus environment as well, so you can see how those play out too. The fact that you have the option of playing like that is really kind of cool. A lot of games don't really do that, or if they do, they don't do it very well because they focus on one aspect, either solo or a different, either cooperative or competitive, and one just feels kind of lacking. One of the things that I really like about this game, well, you know what? Let's just get right into everything. Here's what I like and here's what I don't. What I like is that whether you play solo or whether you play player versus player or cooperative player versus the environment, they each provide a unique experience that are both very fun, very engaging, and just a good experience around the table. I like that. I like the fact that these chips work. I had some I had some reservations about a game fully built around just chips, but it works. I do find myself at times wishing that my champions were minis because it does feel like you're moving minis around a board. And I actually gave that idea to Josh and Adam that it could be a good idea to have minis as rewards or something to purchase in their store, or awards for competitive play or organized play or anything like that. And I may or may not have whipped out some WoW miniatures and placed them on top of here at times playing the game to make it feel like that. But it was a lot of fun. The chips really do work. The other thing I like is that it's very accessible. While it is a very deep strategic game and very tactical in combat, it is very easy to pick up. It's a game that when you look at it, you know what it does. And I like that about games. When I first looked at these chips, and Tim introduced me to Josh and Adam, I looked at it and went, okay, heart, that's health, okay, that's range, okay, that's speed. I understood what it did. I saw dice. That must be what they roll for attack or defense maybe. In the game you don't roll for defense, but it made sense. And then the abilities, the named abilities, is really the only thing that you really have to start to pick up in the game. But again, in a well-designed rulebook, the very back page of the rulebook shows all of the abilities, both for the gladiators and for the champions. So you can just keep that page flipped there and be able to pick it up as you play the game. And as you play the game, because again, the cities have access to some of the basic units that they all will use, you get more familiar with the abilities and you know what they are. Now that said, Ninja Zack is 7 and picked this up really, really quick. Also, chips with kids are great. Loves it. Older guys and older players, so people in my game group who are 30 and 40 plus, picked it up very easy. But even though it's easy to pick up, it's still very strategic, both in the depth of how you play, how you position, and how you attack. Just because you have a great chip in your hand doesn't mean that you're going to be in that perfect moment or at that perfect time to play the chip. It's a great combination of knowing what to play and when to play. And I really do like that. I like the fact that there's a mat and not a board. And I do like the fact, again, that playing it in different levels offers a great experience, whether it's solo or whether it's competitive or cooperative. The final thing I'd like to say is the mechanic of the crowd favor. I really like that. Gladiator is one of my favorite movies. It's definitely not my favorite of all time, but it is a very enjoyable movie. And that line of, "Are you not entertained?" just rings in your head when you play this game. From trying to fight over the center to get crowd favor, to trying to kill off other opponents' gladiators so you can gain more crowd favor, and balance not only your run and your rush up that scale to unlock the levels of abilities that you need, but also unlocking the chips and obtaining the chips or dealing with the chips that your opponents have obtained is a really good mechanic. The game's actually really well balanced. I was worried that the three cities would be so different that one would be more powerful than the other, and they're not. While at times it can feel like that, it really comes down to the player, their ability, and their skill in using their strategies to enact the pulls, the hurls, the furioras, and make an impact in the game. Each city is possible to be played offensively. Each city is possible to be played defensively, and that's really nice. I don't feel that I have to be offensive with El Dorado. I don't feel like I have to be offensive with Xanadu. It offers you the option to truthfully play as you want to play, which is really nice. Now here's what I didn't like. I felt like I wanted more. And this is not a bad thing, it's just the way it is. Playing the game as many times as I did and having access to the same type of units left me wanting different units, more units, different abilities, access to just more and better things. And on a good note on that, I've talked to Josh and Adam, and they have plans for the future for this game and have future expansions with different cities, different gladiators, different abilities, and more to build onto it. So at first, after playing 20-something games in a week or week and a half like I have, it may get to you after a while, but if that's the biggest complaint I have, that's not too bad of a problem. And it's nice to know that these guys have plans in the future to bring different things and make the game fresh and keep it interesting. That said also, there is a lot of times, and I should have mentioned this when we were talking about what I like, when it's not your turn, there's a lot going on, and you're still engaged. That keeps the game very, very interesting. So at the end of the day, where does it fall? Well, you know how we grade. A miss is a game that isn't very good, but it could appeal to some people. A hit is a game that's a lot of fun and a good time around the table for most people. And a crit is something that is a great experience around the table and something that appeals to a wide array of audiences, and something that's also very well designed and put together. This game gets a crit. Now just so you know, Josh and Adam did provide this copy of the game for us. But again, it's just a prototype, it's not the final model. That does not sway our opinion whatsoever. In fact, multiple times during this, while playing, I had questions about, can I do this? Does this ability do that? And it was an evolving thing for me to understand, is this really a crit game? Or is this just something that's fun that is okay? I kept giving emails back and forth between Josh and Adam and got a lot of good support from them, which helped me understand the game better. And as I understood the game better and saw all the strategic depth to it, it just made it that much better of an experience for me. So overall, whether you're a young gamer, whether you're a casual gamer, whether you're an experienced gamer, or whether you're a hardcore gamer, I really do feel that this game appeals to all aspects of gamers and is a lot of fun. I know I personally enjoyed it. We hope that if you've kickstarted it or you do look into getting a copy in the future when it goes live, that you will enjoy it as well. But don't just take my word for it. Definitely take the time to check out Indie 20 Group's review of this and Father Geek's review of this as well to see different opinions and different thoughts. All of us have the same opinion. The more information you have, the more you're going to be armed to make good decisions with your hard-earned money, which is what it's really all about when we're talking about what we do as a job as reviewers. At the end of the day, I hope you've liked this review on Hoplomachus. Would like to thank Josh and Adam for providing us this prototype to be able to share with you. We would definitely like to thank Tim and Larry from the Indie 20 group for introducing us to Josh and Adam, and also to Father Geek for joining us in this group review, so to speak, of Hoplomachus, The Lost Cities. In the meantime, feel free to leave questions or comments here on our YouTube channel. You can also find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Google+, and of course, at our homepage at critshappen.com. Until the next time, keep rolling those dice, or flipping those chips, and we hope they're all crits.